The Future Forged in Our Palms by nolov louscr. Chapter 6. Extra. Should cats be allowed to vote? I think Tomura might be in trouble, Midoriya tells him once they're both in Shota's office and the door has closed firmly behind them. The kid looks terrible, with deep, dark circles beneath his eyes and greasy hair, and his tie knotted even more lopsided than usual. Apparently, the last 3 days of idly waiting for UA to open back up took their toll on his nerves. And beyond that, beyond the exhaustion, Midoriya seems scared, unsure, wary like he sees an enemy in Shota. It's a familiar look, one Shota recognizes from when he was young. It makes his teeth clench with buried anger. Then the name clicks. Shigaraki. Midoriya stares for a moment before nodding. I don't... He stutters to a stop before continuing firmly. He wouldn't have done that without someone convincing him to. Tomura hates heroes and All Might a lot, but since I got into UA, when we talked about it, he didn't less angry about them. Plus, he knew I was in the hero course. He's smart enough to know there was a chance it'd be my class he was attacking, and they had planned to work around it or use my presence, but he didn't. He trails off, biting his lip, fingers twisting together anxiously. He hasn't moved from his tentative position near the door. Shota watches him carefully. Midoriya is obviously distressed, worried and scared and closed off all at once. But Shota also remembers his expression when the villain had first shown up. The surprise and fear. And he remembers his expression when his student had whispered the villain's first name. He remembers squinting through the pain, barely able to move, and seeing the devastation and terror on Midoriya's face. Then the tears start to fall, and Midoriya's shoulders start to shake. The moment's devastation still hasn't faded from his eyes. I don't know what to do, he says, through sobs. Still standing halfway between the door and desk, hunched and wary. I want to talk to him, but he tried to kill us. He was my only friend for years. Shota had not been prepared to deal with this today. Carefully, as to not spook the kid, he stands and rounds the desk. The student doesn't exactly relax when Shota puts a hand on his shoulder, but something about him loosens, like he isn't expecting to be yelled at any moment now. He doesn't understand why the kid acts the way he does, so unlike any other kid with a quirk as strong as his that Shota has ever met. But it doesn't make the behavior new or unfamiliar, and not knowing the route doesn't mean he can't help. You're in a difficult position, Shota tells the kid, because it's true. Your friend has done something terrible, not just to you, but to others in front of you. Midoriya's eyes flick nervously and blatantly between Shota's still bandaged elbow and face. But that doesn't erase him being your best friend and only friend for years, one who you feel may or may not be beyond your help right now. He watches how Midoriya curls further and further in on himself. Knowing this might be a mistake, a misstep, doesn't stop him. He can't make himself tell the boy to let go of his best friend. Shota, when he isn't focused on being logical, is a sentimental fool, one who lost his own best friend too early and too harshly. It is difficult, he reaffirms, trying to gauge how much Midoriya relaxes with the statement. It isn't much. And choices like these weigh on heroes often. You can cut all contact if it feels safer to you. You can continue talking to Shigaraki and either convince him to stop or get enough information to pass on to the police. Each option has its pros and cons, but it'll ultimately be your choice, Midoriya. No one else can make it for you. I would like you to inform me of your decision, though, so I can keep you safe as you go through this. There is still distrust in the kid's expression, but also curiosity, and Shota figures it's the closest he'll get to being in the positive with the kid right now. Broken trust like this takes longer than a few weeks to heal. Midoriya hasn't pulled away from the hand Shota placed on his shoulder, though, so there's probably a chance it'll work out. The kid blinks hard, tilts his head down. I don't know what to do, he whispers, and then he slumps into the chair in front of Shota's desk and his head dips forward, cradled in his hands. Shota understands and chooses to watch. He can't quite make out the words tumbling from his student, but he can tell Midoriya is trying to reason out the options within himself. When his voice trails off, Midoriya looks up at Shota warily. Would you... He stops, breath hitching with more tears, eyes hardening behind the dampness like he's expecting a no. Before I make a decision, would you be there while I read some of the messages he sent after the USJ? I've been too scared to read through them on my own, and I think it'd help me choose to know what he said after. The tears aren't a surprise 2 days later, when Shota finally calls Midoriya into the same office, and they begin scrolling through the last 6 days of messages from Shigaraki Tomura. They were expected. In the short time he's known Midoriya, the kid has shown a propensity for tears that Shota has never seen rivaled. What wasn't expected was how frantic Shigaraki's messages seemed to be. Like he was terrified for Midoriya, worried for a friend in an odd way, scared that he'd lost Midoriya's trust and friendship in one strike, while also worried himself over what he'd done. It was a dichotomy Shota rarely saw, and one that made him dread what he was quickly realizing about the kid's friend. Midoriya slid the phone across the desk and put his head down as soon as Shota took it. He had scrolled down to the latest messages Shigaraki had sent, all from around 3 in the morning, just a few hours ago. Tomura 4FNG, 2:58. I tried to convince him, but he said it had to be then. Why did it have to be then? I'm sorry, Izuku. He has other plans, but I can't. My neck feels like it's burning, but I can't find Kurogiri. Everything goes wrong again, Blair 2. Oh. Tomura 4FNG, 3:21. I shouldn't text you. I tried to kill you, Izuku. What the fuck? Shit. Kurogiri won't answer me, but why would you want to talk to me now? He did this, but I didn't. I'm sorry.